Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. I'm so excited to have Mike Romanelli here to talk to me today. He's the host of the Free Thinker Society podcast, which I subscribe to. So it was very exciting when he reached out to me to have a conversation for my podcast. He's the co-owner of the Dojo of Comedy in Morristown, New Jersey, with Sam Triploli. And he's a former Rave producer and co-founder of Final Phase Records. Mike, thank you so much for giving me your time. Thank you so much for being here to share your awakening experiences with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Amy. I was also very excited when you responded back that you would have me on. I heard you. I loved your episode on Tinfoil Hat. Thought it was great. And when you said that you didn't have enough male listeners, I was like, pick me. I was in my car like, hey, I'll do it. And the way things work with me too is a lot of times I'll get an idea like that, and it was in the car. That's when I listen to my podcast, and normally I'll forget. But I actually was at a bank in line, and I emailed you or hit you up through Instagram like right there. Otherwise, I probably would have forgot. But I'm so happy that this worked out. Divine timing. I'm so excited to just have a conversation with you because I love that episode, and that's the direction. When I started the Free Thinker Society, all the stuff you were speaking about, especially the Akashic records, love that topic. That's what I really wanted to talk about with the Free Thinker Society. And just like everyone, a lot of people, right? We got politics, and I love what Sam is saying, his message, because it's kind of true. It's very true that conspiracies led him to spirituality, because they do go hand in hand, right? And I was just so sick and tired of talking about politics and all the dark side of things, because So I'm just so excited that this is the direction I'm going to start moving my podcast into too. We're going to get away from all the political stuff and talk about just how amazing us humans are that we don't even know. We're just so unaware.
Totally. That's my main thing. It's funny because I started getting that message like 2 years ago, I guess, like really clearly. And I could feel that it was channeling through, like it wasn't just for me. It was something I was supposed to share, but I had to go through the whole process of like being terrified of being seen and using my voice and being ridiculed and all that. But the message was just like, you're amazing. You are so, and it's for everybody. You're so special. You're so important and so powerful. And like, you're not an accident. It doesn't matter the origin story of your parentage or how you came to be here. No matter what circumstances you were born into, you're wanted here on this plane and you're needed here and you make a contribution. And I just think that like we're such an incredible untapped resource, and we've been kind of like convinced that we are the users, but we have so much to give, and we just are starting to uncover that about ourselves.
Yeah. I always use like an analogy, like it's like we're the best iPad Pro possible, just dropped off in a civilization that never saw one before.
Exactly. Totally.
Right? We kind of have an idea how it works, but if you really know how it works, like, whoa, this thing's amazing. So it's like, I say it all the time, like if we really knew how we were, like we hack like how we're supposed to eat, how we're supposed to sleep. Like if we really had a user manual for a human, I think we could be superheroes. I really do. Just from some of the little stuff that I've discovered, and then seeing people like someone like Wim Hof, who just, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yes.
And just that guy is just amazing, and the things he can do. And there's just so many other humans like that. And what do we just not know about ourselves and our potential?
So much.
Yeah. I mean, the psychic thing, right? Like, when people get to know me, I'll tell them early on, like, yeah, I'll call you when you think about me, or because I will freak people out. I'll call someone or text them. Like, it's just been happening to me since I'm a kid. And now I just know I wish I could tap in a little bit more. I wish I could, but I know how to go with my gut. And there's these things but I wish I could really harness that psychic ability, and not to, for financial gain, just more because I think that's our right. And I think I know we all have it. And, third eye, we need to open that thing up, like we got to open that third eye up. And I really hope these conversations help to do it. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think it's just our birthright. And to me, it's kind of like having legs, but being told that your legs are, they're scary. You can't trust them. They're unreliable. And so you just never use them, but they're still there. They still function. You just don't trust them. And how much better your life is when you start using your legs. And then sometimes it takes a lot of work to like bring those muscles back into functioning when they've atrophied, but they're still there. They're still full of potential. I think it's like that. Like we have access to abilities that seem really fantastical and mystical to us from where we are and the paradigm we've been functioning within, but they're actually just like as natural as breathing. And we just have been convinced otherwise, but here we are working towards remembering that. And that's my favorite thing to talk about too. Like, it is hard to talk about the darkness. It's like, on one hand, good to like, I feel like last year was very revealing for me. So I came to conspiracies through spirituality. And
that a lot too.
Yeah, they do go hand in hand, because basically there's more going on here than meets the eye, right?
Yes.
And so last year was a big revelation of horrendous details that, were very hard on my psyche. But I'm glad that I'm not in that place of naivety anymore. But I also was able to tell at various points last year that, like, oh, if I, like, my attention is so powerful that if I pay a lot of attention to these things, feed them my attention and constantly check up on it, then I am contributing to the solidifying of that timeline and that reality. And I can totally shift my attention without necessarily being irresponsible about it, but like consciously shift my attention to constructive, beautiful, creative, collaborative things that bring us closer to who we really are and what our potential is.
Yeah, that's it's like feeding the archons, right? It's
like,
I'm starting to play with that a lot. I'm starting to play with what you're speaking about, in the sense that maybe also, because another thing that's so annoying about conspiracies is like it's psyop upon psyop, right? It's always disinformation. It's like you don't know what's real and what's not real. But one thing for sure, you're scared and you're feeding that into that negativity and you're putting that garbage in your brain, right? Just like, if you eat McDonald's or Burger King or something, right? It's garbage you're putting in your body when you eat. Same thing when you consume. So I really believe that we are everyone's so fearful, right? I'm fearful of a lot of things. Everyone's fearful, but I'm starting to think that maybe the powers that be aren't as powerful as we've been led to think. And it's just more of a fear thing. And there are some other being that's just feeding and thriving off of our fear. And let's just say, fuck it. And let's just be who we are, and let's help. Like, podcast community. There's a perfect one. My friend of mine, I said, I got to go on a podcast. He goes, I thought you do that at night. I said, no, it's I'm going on. And he goes, what is that? All you guys do is just go on each other's podcasts? I said, absolutely. It's the best part about it. I said, it's the best part about it. That we all, we create these little communities and help each other. And it's just like, there's so many exciting things going on in the world with people helping people, and all just the structure is just crumbling, but it's a beautiful thing, because a lot of these things were set up to not empower us at all, to keep us in fear. So
yeah, and they're just reaching their natural shelf life. Like, they also were set up in a non-sustainable way, and so they're crumbling, and it is totally scary. And I would be lying if I said that I'm never scared. But something I really learned through the experience of navigating the period of time before my son was born, his water broke at 20 weeks, and then I went into labor and gave birth to him at 26 weeks. So it was 6 weeks of absolute uncertainty every single moment of every day of every night. And that was actually a tremendous gift, because I learned that how much control I don't have over a whole bunch of variables, but that when I return to the present moment, actually in this moment, I'm okay. And in the moments where it wasn't okay, where he was actually dying, I was still okay. It was still okay. It hurt. It was really intense, but actually it's okay. And that was such a huge liberating gift, to be like, oh, fuck. So basically always I'm okay. Just sometimes in life are really intense, really, really intense. but I'm still actually okay. It's hard to describe it in words, but that's what I come back to. It's really serving me right now when I start to feel the fear creep in. I'm just like, but in this moment, you're okay, and you're at home with your family, and this is okay, and that's okay, and that's okay, and it really helps.
Wow. That's what you're describing is I went through really bad anxiety. And then with the anxiety, I was about 40 pounds heavier. I was like this muscle guy, but then that went away. So I was just like this really big, bloated, fat, out of shape. I was losing 3 businesses, didn't know just had landlords calling me. My blood, went to actually get my teeth cleaned. And the lady that was cleaning my teeth knows me, the hygienist. She knew me since I'm a little kid. And she saw something and said, I got to check your blood pressure like right now. I'm like, okay. And she was like, you can have a stroke. And I
Wow.
was like, whoa. So because I do not trust the medical field at all. I had a bunch of injuries on my knee, and it led to painkillers and all this crazy stuff that doctors just kept telling me, this is what you have to do. So I didn't really trust them. So I would drive by every day, a acupuncturist. And I went to this acupuncturist and I said, hey, I have a blood pressure problem. Can you help me out? And he said, absolutely. It's going to take some time, but I went every week and I would just talk to him, right? When I would sit there, I would talk to him and I really enjoyed it. And he said, hey, I'm writing a book right now. It's called the worry-free process. Can I use you as I don't know, like an example, like put you through the steps while you're here? I said, absolutely. I would love it. Cause I started getting, telling him I'm having a lot of anxiety. And basically to sum up his whole book and his whole process was what you just said. Are you in danger right now? And most of the time you're not. A little extra thing he taught me, which I still use to this day, and I really have not had horrible anxiety, normal like everyone gets, I'm a little nervous, whatever, but I'm saying crippling anxiety is he was saying that, we're designed once again, like we were saying, we're a machine. So fight or flight. So you're in your bed thinking about the landlord calling you, right? But he's not actually calling you. You're just thinking, or it was actually she's calling you. And all of a sudden now you have a drop of what is the hormone?
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline and other type of hormones. They drop in your system. Now, if you're in the wild, you're supposed to run from the bear, the wolf, or whatever. But you're in your bed, in your cozy bed, and that's not what it's meant to do. So he would say, get down and do some push-ups or run in place and expel it. And it was just that simple. And it worked. But the first thing he would say is, are you in immediate danger? He goes, because you might be, you want that to work. If somebody's got a knife and is coming at you, your body's got that little mechanism to help you out. But he said, and he was right. 90% of the time, you're not in danger, even in the worst scenario, right? And that was the first step of the worry-free process, was to check where you're at with danger or and everything's okay. And it kind of checks you at first. And then I would expel through a quick little workout. And it always worked. And I feel like I almost trained my body too, because I don't get that. Like it just went away. I actually lost a ton of weight and a bunch of other things happened too through going to him. And I never had to get on medication, drop my blood pressure, the whole thing. But it was pretty interesting. And your story really got me. And the way you process it and how your son, I don't know the word, but did so much for you, and the way you how you turned it around, that's so inspiring. It really is. It's just so inspiring to me that I'm a parent, and it was hard to listen to you, even with that the whole thing you went through, and the way you turned that around and made him your everything that show you. It's just amazing. I wish if I could have a little bit of that courage and use that. That's just huge, and it's really cool, Amy, that's like that you're showing other people that message. It's just amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. I honestly I receive it and I appreciate it, but I also feel like it was easy compared to what some people go through, only because I love him. So that's what it all comes back to. And so, it's like I think sometimes people go through things it's really hard to find the positive side.
Yeah.
Really hard to find. But for me, it was sort of like, well, I can never regret having him,
Mm-hmm.
or the time that we shared together. So obviously there's something here available for me. And so I kind of got an easy route to it, but I also really appreciate that the opportunity to share it with people, because I did also see in support groups that not everybody feels that way when they go through such a loss.
Yes.
And so I do also acknowledge that it is a little bit unique, and I credit the Akashic records for that. But I would love to hear about how you got into, like, what brought you to your awakening, because I remember listening, I think it was your last podcast episode. It was with Sam and your co-host, and you guys were just sort of heading in that direction, I think, where you were articulating like you're just sort of tired of talking about all this
Oh yeah.
stuff, and you're like, I need a break, I can't do this anymore. And you were talking about your ayahuasca journey and things like that, and I was like, wow, this is so cool, because a lot of the time for conspiracy podcasters, it is so much about that exposing things and helping to spread that awareness, but then you don't hear about the person behind it, and you know,
Yeah.
everything they've been through. So I would love to hear about that.
So my awakening comes in stages, because I knew you were going to ask me this question. I don't want to prepare too much. I want to speak from my heart, but it came in phases for me, right? But there's a couple of big aha moments. One was my 30th birthday. On my 30th birthday, I was in Mexico at Chichen Itza, the pyramid.
Yep.
I climbed that pyramid, got to the top barefoot, and we had this amazing guide who we just clicked. He said a couple of things. It was right before I went on the trip. I was really diving deep on the conspiracies, crazy, you know. And we don't have to go too much into it, but I was also under the towers on 9/11, right? So I didn't speak about 9/11 much to anybody. It's my big trauma. I was 20 years old, so I thought it was just like, everyone sees this. Like, just be tough, you know. It took years to figure out that was my big trauma of all that shit that I saw that day. But I also saw other things, and I was like questioning things, and you know, people were so quick to tell me, no, you didn't see this, and I was like, you know, it's not even worth fighting. Like, okay, sure. And then all of a sudden YouTube comes out, right? And there's like a million people, not a million, but thousands of people like me, and police officers and firemen, and saying the same story I said. And I'm like, huh. Then they took me down this rabbit hole. So then I got a little too crazy with the conspiracies, where I also was so scared back then that I would not use my own computer or like not watch certain things. I really thought I was and then I realized, wait, a lot of people are looking at all this stuff. So I was really diving in. But anyway, when I went to the pyramid, the bus driver, he made some little couple of comments about bankers or something like that, where I'm like, oh, this guy knows what's up, like on the loudspeaker. So I had to talk to him, and he was just totally, you know, saying how, you know, just all the conspiratorial stuff about, you know, who runs the world, and you know, all these wars and all the stuff we know. And so he took a liking. We were together all day, and this was my 30th birthday. So I don't know what made me do this. I took my shoes off and I climbed all the way to the top, and I sat there and I meditated, because I did just start working on meditation around that time. And I got like these downloads. It was just amazing. And the whole day, it's like my life just was different ever since that day. I didn't put my finger on it. I was still addicted to all kinds of drugs. I was, you know, we did conceive my daughter probably that day, which, you know, we were a couple married for a while, trying to have kids, and really, really hard. We were almost at the point in our lives where we were like, we probably won't have kids. I run bars and restaurants. So, and my wife was a bar manager, and, you know, we lived a crazy kind of life, and we were kind of accepting that. We were okay with it. And then that period happened. Now I thought something crazy was going to happen in 2012. And so then my research started going from, I started looking into like the Mayans and Aztecs and other stuff like that. And then I just started just learning and getting different information. And then around that same time period, I started meditating. And then we could fast forward to about a full year went by, and my addiction got out of control, it was very interesting, because I'm meditating, I'm learning all this spiritual stuff, but I was a disaster. And I'm starting to meet people in that space, you know, theta healing people and meditation, just those type of people, yogis and shamans, but I'm a disaster. So then I decided I had to get myself clean, because we did have my daughter. And, you know, that on that trip, 9 months later, my daughter shows up. So I'm like, I can't be a role model to her like this. Can't do this. So I was lucky enough to go to this really special place. I won't say where it was, just because I don't want to give anyone up. But when I went to this facility to get clean, it was run by a lot of Native Americans. I had no idea. So we were doing ceremonies. a lot of ceremonies, burning ceremonies, very similar to the ayahuasca ceremonies, minus that they weren't giving you ayahuasca in a rehab, but a lot of the same stuff, a lot of the same release and chanting, meditating, and even putting yourself in uncomfortable position, like things like hot or cold. And when I was there, there was just so many different people I met. I always tell people that I felt like I was on that show Lost. Like I think I might have died there or something. It just didn't. And the connections I still have to this day from people I met there were such special, different people. Like I said, I don't want to say who they are because that would not be right. But it was just amazing. And from there, I had 60 days of my life to not worry about work, to not worry about anything. My wife kept telling me, no, do this for yourself. We're fine here. So I felt comfortable. And I really, really, really read tons of books, was meditating like crazy. We were in the desert. So it was just such a special place, just connecting with nature every single day. I'd be in nature and just that. Then I came out of there and I went to work, and a year went by of like program type work, and I was still meditating. My meditations at this point were like, it's like I was on steroids with these things I was telling people, because once I had a clear mind, it was like, wow, this is like psychedelic experiences. Like I would meditate sometimes for an hour and a half at a time on a Sunday afternoon. And it was just like, I was having these amazing experiences. Then I fell into the Wim Hof breathing. I started doing the holotropic breathing and all that stuff. But a year goes by and I started to hit a wall, and I was done with the program, we'll call it. I don't want to, it was just not serving me. It was not serving me. It was a lot of grouchy people, a lot of unhealthy people. I'm like, we're supposed to be healthy. This doesn't make sense to me. And because divine timing, divine, whatever you want to call it, just this world, synchronicities, whatever. So my mentor, I should back this up. My mentor at the time, he also had an alcohol problem, about 10 years older than me. And he went to rehab. So we have this relationship where we speak every couple months, but we're always kind of doing the same thing without even talking. So he gets out of rehab. So it's about a year we talk, and I'm like, hey man, I've been researching this ayahuasca and and all these ceremonies just to like deal with our shit that I feel like I didn't deal with in rehab. And he's like, he was at some retreat or something as I was like, oh, come on. And that's true. So he sent me, so he did he's a single guy. He was 50 at the time. And he's still, he hasn't come back to the States. He's been, I think he's in Costa Rica or Colombia now, but he went hard with these circles and ceremonies. And right away, I got catapulted into that community. And from that time period, when I started doing that, it brings back when I was heavier with the blood pressure, and then all this stuff was just not good. I was smoking a lot. It was just not, I was sober, but I was just inside, I was not fit spiritually at all. So I started doing these ceremonies, and I'm like, right at the first one was just amazing. And I believe what I'll call it is I experienced Christ consciousness, which was, I feel like I'm still kind of chasing that. It was so amazing. That was my first ceremony. Now, obviously you can't go to ceremonies all the time, but from that ceremony, it was just like synchronicities. I started meeting people who come into my life. I had this fast food hamburger restaurant, and the people, it was on a highway, and the people that would come in, it would like freak people out, because it would just be like, I'm still to this day not sure if these were humans. They could have been like from another dimension or something, but these perfect beings would come in. And when I say perfect, sometimes they were old woman or old man, but their message, what they would talk to me about their hamburger, I'm like, where are you from? And they would never be in the area. And I'd have these encounters with people that were just so strange and awesome. And I just kept getting, like I was saying about the psychic thing, calling people or texting. And I was like, wow. And then, so it came in layers, right? The awakening. So it started like kind of with conspiracies. Then when I climbed the pyramids, it really, something happened. Then I started doing these ceremonies, and it was clear that, I was having a spiritual awakening. And then now what happens, and it happens often, I can never predict when it happens. I call it a download. It happened to me the other night, 1, 2 in the morning. I popped up out of bed, could not sleep, and just the information was coming. And it's like, I wish I had a notebook. And sometimes some people have asked me on my show, do you feel like you're going crazy? And I always said no. This last one, kind of feel like I'm maybe starting to go crazy. But everything I was writing down and all the information that was coming to me, it's not crazy information. It's all like stuff that might sound crazy to some people, but to me, it's just, I'm tapping into something that I don't even really know what I'm messing with, but the information I'm getting and the ideas, and, we could use an example of people ask me all the time, how did you meet Sam Triploli? I don't know how I'm really partners with Sam. I was a fan of his show. I booked him, and I feel like I blinked my eyes, and we became very good friends and business partners. And I'm just telling you that not to brag, because it's just that it's once you're in tune, you can get, and you got to be careful, because if you can get the bad as well if you put your mind too much. You know what I mean? Like if I think about really bad stuff will happen. If I think about, not that it's bad, I don't worry, but it's a burden, right? When you own a restaurant for the health inspector. If I think about her enough, she will be there that day. I can promise you that.
Yeah, she feels it. She's like,
I can promise you. If I'm like, man, I got to fix this, whatever, because I inspect her and I start thinking about her a little bit more than I should, she will show up.
Yeah.
And you could use that example with all kinds of stuff. And so I think I'm at a point now where I'm trying to sharpen this spiritual awakening and understand it more, and kind of the way yourself with how you tap into Akasha records and things. I want to get to that level. So that's where I'm at. Now, I should go back a little bit. When I was a kid, high school, too early, I messed with a lot of psychedelics. Once again, kind of messing with things I didn't realize, thinking that's another message I have for all types of people, is that drugs are not just drugs. There's all types of them. But as a 90s kid, their kid, that age, that's what you're told, that they're all the same. And honestly, I think it did worse damage than good, because I literally didn't tell anyone that I took LSD or mushrooms. I thought it was the same thing as heroin or crack. And I had no idea. And I was going to these raves. But my point of telling you this is because I would have some of these psychedelic experiences and later on realize, wow, all about oneness, right? That would always come to me. Oneness, the feeling of the I am, all these little things that I learned later on through spiritual books and work, I was getting at that age, just didn't have any idea what they were. I was getting those messages. And it's kind of messed up too, because you'd almost be like, oh, I just loved everyone because I was on drugs. Well, no, not really. It's because the veil was thin, and you saw that we all are about love, and love is what we are supposed, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, totally. I think, like, for example, like, because that was ecstasy was a big thing in the 90s and the 2000s. And that was the characteristic, that it would like tune you sort of artificially, but not really. Like, it's like it gave you a pathway to a state of connectedness that you hadn't pre-paved and cultivated yourself. So you got to be there for a while until the chemicals wore off, and then the retreat back into like separateness just like, felt so like, oh
yeah.
But I think it's like that with all, like, a chemical example, but like any of the earth-based ones like psilocybin, or even smoking weed, or I've never done ayahuasca, so I can't say for sure. But what I hear from people who have done it is similarly, like it expands, or DMT even, like it expands what you can perceive, but you always return back to your baseline. So in some ways, like, it's extremely liberating, and there's this opportunity for like healing and purging and like big, profound, lasting shifts, but you still got to come back to, like this reality, and commit to those shifts, commit to keeping those shifts. And it can be really hard if you haven't laid the foundation with the, I hate to frame it this way because it sounds so like, wah, but with the self-work part, because if you haven't set that up, then the rhythms, the pre-practiced, very well rehearsed, very well embedded rhythms of our life and our perception just take over. They're just the default, but they don't have to be the default. They're the default until we put the work into shifting to a different default.
Yes. And I'm guilty of kind of always, with everything I do, kind of messing with things and like, okay, I'm here and I'm going backwards. I'm working on my foundation now. And I feel like I got to that Christ consciousness feeling, which was, and saw whatever it was just amazing. So that's, yes, you are right. You have to build that foundation. And that's what I'm trying to hopefully do now. I feel like, I do that with everything. That's just the way I am. And I probably shouldn't be doing things that way, but yes. But the whole awakening, I don't know about yourself, but I know for myself, when I was in that facility and there were some people, I say, man, I want to be like that guy. He was so happy. He was so calm. He was so cool. And then when I got to know this guy, his story was fucked up, man, very fucked up. And it was a lot of work. And I remember thinking like, he just has this because he worked there. but he was a real deal guy. Like he was like, he started talking to me for real. Like we'd have real conversations, and he went through it, man. And I thought he was full of shit when he would say it to the group. But most of the awakened people I've ever been in presence of, or people that have what I want in that calmness and that spirituality, we'll call it, they've been through war and they've done the work. You know, it's not like this little like, oh, okay, the world is just love and light and everything's so happy. A lot of those people, that's the way they live their lives and the way they seem, so happy and bubbly and everything's great. But you don't know the shit they had to go through to get there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, awakening is not an easy thing.
Good God, no.
It is not
totally.
Easy.
That was actually really why I started this podcast, because my 20s felt so alienating and isolated and lonely. And like I did have a few, like my oldest son's father, we kind of trauma bonded through being like semi-awakened but having no idea what the fuck was actually happening or how to cope with it. So we had a super dysfunctional play out of our relationship, but we were, bonded in a good way, but codependently. And one of my best friends was also going through some intense stuff, but like she was diagnosed with bipolar, so she wasn't doing well either. So those were the two people I could share this with, who didn't think I was crazy, but they technically were diagnosed as crazy. So it didn't really help. I mean, it was better than being completely alone. I'll say that for sure. But it just felt so crazy, and like it's hard. It's so uncomfortable to question your reality and to feel completely ungrounded and to go through that for sustained periods. Sometimes I also had really intense anxiety just because I was like, I don't know what's real. I don't know what reality is. And I remember sometimes I would get downloads. Like I still get them, but now I'm just used to it. But I would get these downloads that felt like too much information for what I could file away properly. And it felt like I couldn't even begin to talk about it, because if I opened my mouth, the only thing that would come out would be like a scream. But it wasn't bad information. It was just like, my circuits are exploding. I can't handle all this. It's crazy. Awakening is not easy. It's not. And I think it's a constant unfolding for everyone, because I still feel like I'm awakening to new layers and new levels all the time.
I absolutely feel that way. It's been going on for a while. I want to ask you, when you get those downloads, do you think that is, you're tapping into the Akashic records and you're just not like grasping, or is that just something different?
I'm not sure, actually. When I learned how to read the Akashic records, I was really surprised to find out that it was familiar, and I had been doing it, but unbeknownst to me for a long time. So it could be coming from there, or it could just be coming from like receiving, I don't know, higher dimensional consciousness or something like that, like, for example, one of the more powerful ones that I got this year, I got it in May, and it was an understanding of how the dimensions of consciousness arrange themselves. And prior to that, I could kind of start feeling into the sixth dimension, but nothing more than that, really. And I got like, woof, the whole thing from 0 to 13. And it actually took days for my brain to be able to understand it. And my thumb kept twitching, like this muscle right here.
Oh, really?
And it felt like Morse code, but it was too fast, and I don't know Morse code, so I couldn't decipher it. But once I finally got it all and I wrote it down, it stopped. It was really interesting. So I think just sometimes there's like, we just get access to information that is available to us, but I don't know, it's like you have to be kind of primed for it a little bit. And if you're not primed for it, then that's when the awakening periods become really difficult. But you can still receive it. Like I like how your first layer of awakening came even though you were using a lot of drugs and stuff like that, because I don't think you have to be a pristine vessel to awaken. I think it's just our natural trajectory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. They say some I've had shamans tell me that when you see, because a lot of them they think I live in New York City, even though it's 40 minutes away, just because so it's like they love to ask questions and talk about New York back then. And they'd say, you know, those people you see talking to themselves on the street, and they were like, that person is getting messages. And it's just, they had a different, I don't know if I 100% agree with it or believe it, but I've heard it multiple times from different people that saying that sometimes street people that are spouting out all this nut stuff is just that they're getting information, right? So I don't think, I am in the belief that all this stuff is for everyone, that no one's special. It's just how many blockers are you putting up in front of your eyes? You know, that's what I really, you know, we're all equal. We all have this power in us. It's just that, you know, and it's also another thing for me with the awakening, and it's still kind of uncomfortable. I'm a little embarrassed, especially, you know, being a manly man and a dude, you know, talking about, you know, it's weird because recently people are starting to, I think, awaken a lot more. So I will get phone calls from my friends that used to tease me, which it's fine. I love to get teased and made fun of. It's great. But they will call and be like, hey, you know, so, you know, that crystal you had or whatever, I don't know, whatever, you know, something that they used to maybe make fun of me about. But I believe we all have it, and it's just who's asleep or who's the sheep. And I also, I don't know where you feel on this. I believe that something big is about to happen. And I don't know if it's my lifetime, maybe it's my children's lifetime. I'm not sure it's going to be me so much as maybe my kids. I don't know. But I feel like there's this age coming of something amazing. And I really feel like people that are going to be awakened are going to enjoy it and see it. And I have an idea of maybe what it is. And then, you know, and then others are going to be so asleep that what I think they might do is they might upload themselves to the machine. And I really believe this is what this is all about, is a transhumanism thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that is what it's about, is just trying to like basically thwart this unthwartable progression in our consciousness and the evolution of our consciousness. And so it's so interesting that you say that. I love it when people share this with me because it's really confirming. So on December 20th, I got this big download, I guess. It took place in like 5 minutes, but it was really altering for me. And it was like, oh, you need to step into the priestess archetype. You're a priestess, and it's time to use the word oracle, which I always thought like oracle, but to like embody those, and don't let your bullshit human ego limitations like hold you back anymore. And so I've been like working on that. And then the further message I got was, it's because the divine feminine and the divine masculine are rising and returning to their original uncorrupted blueprints. And so it's like, if what it felt like was a bifurcation on that solstice conjunction, like 21st of December 2020 kind of space, where right now like the bifurcation has taken place. So we're changing course, and right now it's tiny, it's almost imperceptible, but as we keep going, it's going to separate more and more and more. And the souls that still want to play in the polarized 2D 3D 4D realm and still want these experiences, there's still a lot here for them. They get to stay here. And those who are ready to move on to higher levels of creation, higher levels of awareness, get to go there. And that's that divine feminine, divine masculine rising, which is why there's such a huge contrast where we see divine feminine rising, but also really, really like fucked up, thwarted, corrupted, damaged feminine. And we see divine masculine rising, and we see like very, very disturbed, wounded, damaged masculine. And they're just having to separate like oil and water for this, like in this bifurcation process. But I also feel like we're going somewhere really beautiful, and that actually all of us have already made our decision. And I don't think it's necessarily about leaving anybody physically behind, although I'm not sure. But I do feel like there's some people in my life that I'm feeling distanced from, not because of any intentional distancing between us, apart from the ridiculous social distancing, but just emotional distancing that's happening. And I think it's because we've just made a different choice. And I love them, and I respect their soul trajectory. I don't need to be their savior, you know, but that's just what I intuitively feel.
Well, that was really cool because I actually got chills for a second, because we could actually get the exact date because I could tell you an event that happened. So I had a very heavy psychedelic experience. I was supposed to be at a ceremony with my friend, like with these shamans, but I couldn't because I couldn't leave the business. So I took it on myself to take probably too much of a psilocybin dose. But anyway, it was very large, but I probably would never do it again. But the message and what I saw, these things are very hard to put into words. So
Yeah.
but the message was what you just said about the divine feminine. Really, for me, was more about the divine feminine, and I saw that it was time for the women to rise and take back. And I know I get killed. It's funny because Sam doesn't kill me, and even I don't know if you know who Tommy G is. I've told them this a bunch of times, and I always feel like they're going to kill me, and they definitely will when I say this. But it's like it's time for the women to rise up, and it doesn't mean it's true feminism. It's not this bullshit they're, and I saw it. And it was so, I could say, I speak about it absolute because it was so real to me. And it was so, the message I got really from Mother Earth, it came from Gaia about, I don't really like to speak this way in front of a lady, but I saw basically it looked like a phallic symbol, like just drilling into the earth. Right. And it's like over, done. She's done with that. And it's time for the ladies. And it wasn't in an offensive way. It was like, no, men have a big part in balancing the ecosystem of life and earth. But it's time for them to go back to, I know this is controversial and people might not like what I'm saying. And I my intention is good for this. It's not bad. But the men need to go back and hunt and prepare and maybe even be sure, just do their roles. And the women need to take over and because that's the way it was supposed to be, or maybe this age was ending is more probably what it is, and a new age was coming where it's women in power and the men are just kind of here to be like the grunts or whatever, and it's this feminine energy rising, and it has to be this way for Gaia to heal. And I also was like told that many lifetimes before me that this was the way when things were peaceful and in a good state. And it's like the men fucked it up. I know it sounds so weird, but it's like the guys fucked it all up, and it's time to like take that back. And real quick, the reason why I say I'll know that date is how weird is this synchronicities. I at this point could care really less about politics. I woke up and it was the Women's March all over the TV. Not woke up, came to, put the TV on, whatever I was done. It was Women's March everywhere. And I was like, now, whatever you think about that, whatever. But it was just very funny. It's just like I always get these little winks, like from
the universe. Right?
Like, told you that was real.
Like, that was real. It was not just, a mushroom-induced psychosis. It was real. Exactly. Totally. Oh, I love this. This makes me so excited because it's fairly new information that's channeled through to me. Like I kind of started getting the beginnings of it on the solstice, but I'm running a program called the Priestess Portal right now for a couple of women that are similarly called to embody that and step into that. And one of the things that came through was the drama is over. The conflict between men and women is over now, but we have to choose that. Like we have to continue to choose it and reinforce it. And that the divine feminine is leading the divine masculine because the group that's in the more oppressed role actually remembers who they are more clearly. Because anytime you oppress somebody, you crystallize their truth. It's kind of like the pressure on carbon that creates a diamond. So I think that's true of any indigenous community. It's not that they don't go through long periods of wounding and forgetting, but they also carry this diamond of truth within of how important they are. And the role of the oppressor, it's easier to get to really buy into it and forget who you really are. So the message was that the divine feminine needs to lead the divine masculine out of the forgetting because we can't rise separately. Like we rise together or not at all. And this is it. I think that's what you're meaning, like true feminism, where it's not vengeful, angry, it's our turn now kind of feminism. It's like, no, this was all a terrible nightmare and we get to just let bygones be bygones now and move forward together in healing and acknowledging that everybody was wounded by this. And I personally don't think that it was the men that fucked it up. I think it was another system.
Yeah.
I think it was a psyop that was created to pit us against each other because it was just easy to do. And and then I just can't see. I think the reason that this has always been clear to me, like even in the midwifery program, you're kind of supposed to be a feminist and you're supposed to like not hate men, but feel strongly about it. I never could because I always knew my first child was going to be a boy, and he was, and he's so brilliant and beautiful and so amazing. And like, why is he different than any other male? He's not. It's just like what men can be, what women can be, what boys can be, what girls can be without piling all of our wounds on them. And like, just for example, like men get really hurt in this system too. Circumcision is a perfect example. Like to me, that's just wow. You're going to create a pain pathway connected to the genitals in a person who is in their first days of life. That
right away, just inducing trauma right away.
yeah, it really is. And like I mean, similar to what you were saying, like when you say stuff like that, you worry about offending other people. And I don't want to cast any blame or judgment or aspersions on anyone. We just get wrapped up in the things that we do and we don't really necessarily realize the ramifications. But to me, it's just like, how can we expect whole generations of men to grow up and feel powerful and intact in their role when they receive this initial extremely painful wounding?
Wow, that is so true. And I never really thought about it that way. I mean, I thought about, wow, why are you doing this to a poor little baby, right? But yeah, that's true. Wow. That is, but yeah, so when I say about offending though, it's just that I don't want people to think like, oh, he's just being, because there's some guys that do that are like virtual signaling to women.
Of
like,
course,
I'm not,
totally.
I'm just saying it's more like you say, it's about divine feminine energy rising.
Yes.
And it's time for that to rise.
Yeah.
And also for men to empower but their male energy.
Yes. Yes.
It's all getting muddied up right now, which it's interesting. I don't want to talk about conspiracies. If you notice, a lot of the end of civilizations, a lot of this stuff does happen. If you look at other history, where even just what's going on, like I'm the type of person. I mean, I'm an ex-rave promoter, whatever you want to. I've been around every walk of life possible, but it's like it's strange to me that hip hop is like the way hip hop is going in our culture right now, where the men are dressing almost like women, and hip hop is normally, if you listen, I'm not a fan anymore, but it's normally about like tough stuff.
It used to be like super masculine.
It's like, wait a minute, what's going on? Like, and I don't, I'm not that age anymore, so I'll see someone, and I'm like, wait, that's that guy from that song, and you're like, wait, what? And it's clearly they're programming and messing with things, and it's just like, it's just the end of, it's definitely the end of something. You could see it. The wheels are coming off. We just need more people like you and other light workers out there, which I think there are a lot, just preparing people for this shift.
Holy moly. I mean, I knew that there were a lot, but I'm really getting my eyes open to it right now, because I actually had no idea how big the listenership for Tinfoil Hat was. I figured it was pretty big, but I didn't realize how big it was. And I honestly just wanted to talk to Sam about the star seeds and the firmament and all this stuff based on an episode he had. And he was like, no, I want to talk about the Akashic Records. And I was like, cool, let's do it. But I thought I might get a small handful of messages of like people who are kind of like into that. But my whole life, I've felt rejected for being interested in this kind of stuff. I still am in my physical, personal relationship. My old friends and my immediate family are kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk about it.
Oh, I know. I get the same type of thing.
Yeah. So I didn't think I was going to get the kind of response that I did, but I'm still getting messages all the time, messages I can't keep up with, although I will answer everybody. But it's amazing because I'm just realizing like, yeah, there are a lot of us. And because we're physically, geographically separated a lot of the time, it can make us feel like we're just alone and things are really hopeless. But actually, there's a huge, it's like we form a whole entire galaxy of awakened souls. And that doesn't mean you have to be completely awakened with a pretty bow on the package and completely enlightened. It's just like basically a whole bunch of souls that have a sense that there's something else going on here, and that they're not just going to mindlessly follow the prompts that we're given, and that they are kind of compelled to discover more about themselves. And I think that's all it takes. I really do.
Mm. Yeah. Well, the internet. I mean, look, we're speaking to each other through like a, you know, I mean, this is crazy. And, you know, I know my age, it's like, it's awesome because I, you know, I remember you had to remember phone numbers and things like that. And now I'm talking to you through a screen, you know, like it's amazing. And it's making the world smaller, obviously, but it's bringing us all these people together. I think it's all it was all supposed to be this way, and all part of this elaborate plan of bringing people together. Sam likes to say it got away from them, whoever them are, but I know what he's talking about. You know, their tech and stuff gets away from them. And it's true, but it's beautiful. And as much as like, if you like, I stopped watching TV, news, all that stuff. And I can't even enjoy films anymore. I really can't. It's hard. Yeah. It's just like, I just see all the propaganda and all the bullshit. That's why I just love comedy. And so I've just kind of watched that kind of stuff. But my point is all these people are coming together through podcasts, and you know, it's that whole crystal rainbow warrior, you know, indigos. I'm a big believer in all that stuff. You know, I don't know, these kids being born these days are it's pretty interesting when you speak to you, right? I mean, they are. It's like, where do you guys come from? This is cool. And I think that's a big reason why, once again, I'm trying to get away from conspiracies, but it's hard not to. It's like, that's definitely why the food is so messed up and all these vaccines, because whoever is in charge doesn't want to keep the grasp of their power. Know that these kids, okay, if we don't do it, well, these kids definitely will, especially if they're pure, the pure ones that are their minds aren't all messed up and they're not given all these poisons. Wow, these kids are on like another. It's crazy, man. I was watching my son and his little friends at karate, and they were opening they're like, oh, we got to open this portal, and they're opening portals and like all these all the stuff there, these terms, and these are 3-year-olds. I was like, wow, guys, this is so cool. And it's just like these kids, man, they're coming up. And I for myself, I believe that my job is two things for this lifetime is to help people that are waking up, people that all of a sudden learn about these atrocities or whatever it is that are maybe it's very hard to digest. Yeah. So I'm there for those people, but even more so, it's like, I really think for my kids for me to explain to them about what is coming and what's going, you know, and they're a little young now, but I teach them how to meditate, teach them how to speak, like, you know, basically, how do we say it? Like, teach them how to, like, for example, we'll say like, we close your portal at the end of the night, or, you know, and how to, right. You know, like there's just little stuff that we do with them so they get it, and like how to pray, you know, not praying for things, and you know, gratitude. And I'm teaching them all this stuff at a young age because, man, I wish I was taught this stuff this young. And I really feel like it's my role because I'm preparing for this event. And I keep saying, I don't know if I'm going to see it. I hope I will. Maybe I won't. Maybe it's my grandkids. I have no idea, but I got to be the crazy old dad, grandpa, whatever, but teach them this stuff, and hopefully it sticks, and hopefully both of them listen. Because I think, if I had to guess, with this whole indigo, age of Aquarius, whatever we want to call it's happening right now, is I really think that the last level is going to be transhumanism. I really do. And it's going to be like marketed to us like, you can live forever. This is great. What do you mean? And I think that's going to be the trick. I hope I'm wrong, but I see it. It seemed like 10 years ago when we were talking about this, it seemed a little bit far-fetched. Now it's starting every day to look clearer and clearer. And this is my old meditation teacher, the one who told me about this. Like he started talking to me about, you know, my job. And he's an older man. He was like, my job is to make sure that you don't ever upload to the machine. And I'd be like, what? In the beginning, I was like, what is he talking about? And then he'd always bring it up and just be like, listen, make sure. And I'm like, okay. And then years later, he gave me some books and I read about it. It did seem very sci-fi back then. Yeah. But now it doesn't so much, especially when you have shows like Black Mirror and things like that. You're like, right. Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like that's going to be my role, to be like, hey guys, like, just don't say no to that machine. Don't go in there. I don't know. I just keep getting, and that's a message I've been getting forever, is not forever, for the last 5 to 10 years. It's really been coming to me that it's going to be that choice. And you got to tell whoever will listen, or the loved ones that want, because there's other people I try to bring this up with and they're like, oh my God, sign me up right away. I'm like, all right, that person, I'm not even going to try. Yeah. I'm not even going to try. Like, I love you. You're one of my best friends, but I start bringing it up and you're like, oh my God, wait, they're going to have this where? I'm like, okay. Nope. Because I don't want to argue or fight with anyone either. Like I'm done trying to. I've actually never really was into that. I always kind of kept it to myself of wakening people up. It's not really my thing. I like to be there more for when the person wakes up. I was like, hey, I was at your house and you were talking about whatever. I don't know, flat Earth. Let's just say I'm not a flat earther, but just saying.
Yeah.
I'm known to troll some of my friends with flat Earth just for fun. Like, ones that really hate any of that stuff, I'll watch like the most ridiculous flat Earth video just to get them annoyed. Or the birds aren't real videos and stuff. And they're like, you believe all this stuff, don't you? And I'm like, yeah, why? And I just totally mess with them.
Yeah, I totally think that I agree. It looks like it's transhumanism, and it's for just the purposes of like continuing with this subjugation. It's like just having things on lockdown and under control. And it's interesting because I also find through my Akashic readings that a lot of people are being drawn back to nature. And it's like nature is really calling a lot of people back. And I think it's because of that bifurcation where there's like that energy of the organic potential, the non-tech potential, the organic potential that is kind of like, hey, over here, you're amazing. You have literal crystals in your brain. It's called your pineal gland. You have calcite crystals in there. Let's do this. Like, you do not need to upload to a machine at all.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's so weird too, right? Because I'm praising tech too. We're talking through this screen. It's part of it is great. I don't think we need to be melding. Like, we don't need to be merging with it.
I agree. And I kind of like navigate this a lot. Like when I kind of realized the new data terms of service of Instagram, I was like, what am I going to do? I have to get off Instagram. This is so invasive. This is not acceptable. And I can't support this. And what am I going to do? And I'm still kind of trying to think of a plan, but I'm also like, well, you don't need to respond in fear. And if you are also getting this opportunity to connect with so many people. And if you throw the baby out with the bathwater, then you lose the baby too. So yeah, so I just feel like we can use technology, but not buy into that idea that we need to be enhanced. And that, like, first of all, there's so much enhancement available to us, and it's called exploring within. And it's not even hard, because to me, it's just our natural trajectory. The biggest part to me that's hard about discovering our psychic gifts is that, number one, we're not a very disciplined group of people in the West anymore. We've lost a lot of discipline, apart from people who are like, athletes or, concert musicians or anybody who has a discipline. It's a little bit easier for them because they have that pathway in their brain. But for a lot of people, just even simply learning how to meditate or focus on your breath is hard, because our attention spans are so short. And also there's a ton of noise. There's a ton of competing like brain crap going on. So it can feel really hard. So that's one of the things that gets in our way, or it's one of the hurdles to overcome. And then B, it's all the limiting beliefs that we've received about ourselves, that we've taken on board. And unfortunately, we received so many of them in those first 7 years of our lives where we're literally in a hypnotic state. So it gets buried so deeply. I was laughing with somebody a while ago about, might have been in my Facebook group, about the movie Inception and how they're like, oh, you can't do that. That's so hard. You can't implant an idea in somebody's brain. I'm like, literally, that's like the easiest thing ever. Yeah. And they do it all the time. Like, that's their game. But they're basically trying to tell us it's impossible. But no. All the time, that's what they do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you this. It's funny because so I had to ask you anyway. Do you ever get like, have you ever meditated or gotten to these states around, like, let's say someone watching TV, or I swear I see those waves of those, because I meditate a lot, like in my living room. I don't have a big house. So in my living room where everything's happening, I just have learned to just go within, and maybe they have like a movie on or something. And I swear I see like the waves of bullshit that's getting fed to them, whether it's, you know what I'm saying? It's so hard. It's so hard to speak about a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, at least for myself, put into words. But I actually see like a force field, or and the bigger like a blockbuster film or something, it's stronger. Or like I remember one time my wife was watching some kind of award show or something, and it was like, whoa, what the hell? Like I gotta shield myself from this crap, and try to teach myself I think I can do it, as to like build a shield so it doesn't come into my head. But I've actually physically seen those forms of whether it's the programming or I don't know what it is, but it's like the same those same rays, I'll call them, do not happen on something that I know, if I'm watching a band's concert on my TV,
Yeah.
It's high production. It's only, a lot of times with children's movies, even crazier.
Yeah.
Award shows, especially, like I can't stand those. And they've been back. My wife used to watch them a while ago, more years ago. And I would, see that kind of stuff. Do you ever see anything like that? Do you kind of understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think I just feel it more. I feel them lock into it, and and the feedback that's happening where like I don't physically see waves, but I can sort of feel the waves between the message and like it being received and reinforced, and you know what I mean, through
Yes.
somebody's attention. But I feel really lucky right now because my husband is like he had to wait for me to get up to speed with a lot of this stuff. Even though I was super spiritual, I didn't see as many of the conspiracies as he did. And so he watches with a great degree of lucidity and consciousness. He watches things and kind of, knows what's up. But when I go visit my parents, for sure, like they have the CBC radio playing all the time. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the same thing. Like I can hear it's like just detecting their perception changing
Yeah.
as, these suggestions are coming in.
That might be what I'm seeing. Okay. Man, it is it's a great time. Like sometimes I'm like, wow. There are times that I'm like, I wish I wasn't awake. I actually have said it. But I feel like 2021, I'm like, what a time to be alive.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. It's pretty awesome. It's definitely frustrating. Like you were saying, social distancing and all that stuff, I think is just vile. What how children are scared of their grandparents, or I don't even know what they're telling them. Like you can't hug them. And like, it's crazy. That psychological trauma that we're doing to these kids, especially ones that really never been in school and they're these plexiglass boxes and stuff. That stuff is terrible. What's going on? But there's also a lot of just amazing things happening and awakenings happening everywhere. And I was saying before that I think my job is to help people that they watch some YouTube video or something new and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Or maybe they just start going down a rabbit hole, and just like, let people know, especially with my friends, let them know like, yeah, there's some really fucked up shit out there, but you know what? Wait till you find out about what you could actually achieve yourself, or all of this other stuff that's been hidden from you.
I feel like The Matrix is a really good sort of analogy for that in terms of big movies. It's like, you wake up from The Matrix and you basically barf because it's so intense and awful. And the jarring, shift from your previous perception of reality is so like, but then eventually you realize it leads you to this opportunity to develop like who you really are, rather than your false perception of who you think you are within a very, very limited box. I think that's a really amazing purpose I think I'm on a similar purpose where I'm not really here to wake anybody up, but I'm like, hey, you going through some shit? Come here, let's form a community.
Absolutely, man. I play with this idea, not that it matters, not that I could change and close my eyes to everything anymore, but I'll use an example. Like before my awakening, I loved Disney. I thought Disney was so cool. I couldn't wait to have kids to take them to Disney World. I thought like it was like a geeky thing that my wife and I would do. Like we go to Disney World, on a vacation, and we went like so many times before we had kids. And then once I woke up, I'm like, oh, like and at first, those first couple of years, I was still like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So my daughter got to experience it, where my son doesn't even know like what is that, and he doesn't even watch that kind of crap. But it's like sometimes I'm like, and I know how evil it is, and it sounds so terrible, but sometimes I just like wish I didn't, so I could just enjoy a Disney film with my kids, but I can't. I watch it or anything to do with Disney, and I'm like, oh, this is so gross, from everything that they have to put out. It's just vile. And it sucks because Pixar movies are amazing, the animation and everything. But it's so sometimes I play with the idea, like I wish I could go to sleep, but it's all bullshit. That's just me just messing with myself. I would never change it. I being awake is, and it's what it has to be done right now. That's what I'm saying. You got to you're either asleep and you're a sheep, or you're awake. And I never felt more that the time is right here, right now. And I could be wrong, like I said, with the timing. I thought 2012, and I'm still not convinced that something didn't happen on 2012.
Yeah, and like also, I mean, I think 2012 was maybe just that like we heard a lot of buzz about it too, right? Like, or for me anyway, because looking back, I'm like, I don't know, I don't think I really like had a big awakening that year at all. Like my grandma passed away, and that was hard, but it was pretty low key normal year for me. But this year, there's no denying it. Like 2020 and 2021 is like, this is not just conjecture that something might be happening. It's like, oh, it's on.
Oh yeah. And then like, are you aware, or do you study any of like the retrogrades and things like that?
Kind of. I'm like peripherally aware of them, and I understand what they mean, but I also stubbornly refuse to calendar my life around it. I'm not sure why, because I think it's actually beneficial. And this Mercury retrograde has been giving me such a freaking hard time with technology. So like, I totally believe in it, but
yeah, I was going to say, because I feel like a couple of years ago, like I want to say 2 years ago, there were so many retrogrades, like more than normal. And I looked up this year, and I think there's like 4. And that seems normal. Like I don't know much about it. I just know that things do get wonky when it's retrograde. I try not to sign contracts. I try to like live my life loosely around that stuff. I wish I knew a lot more, because it does seem that people that really know how to harness it and use it really perfect certain aspects of their lives. I was just wondering, because I just noticed that we're in a retrograde now, and I looked, and there was only 4, and I swear it was like last year or the year before, there was just like every other week it was a retrograde.
Last year there was a lot going on astrologically. Yeah, it was crazy last year how much stuff was happening. For sure, it was wild. And I mean, clearly it was wild because as above so below, really. And I think it reflects things, reflects the energies, and then we sort of live out the energies through those archetypes here on earth. But it's crazy.
Yeah, it is definitely crazy. So do you see us shifting into a more peaceful, positive place in the next 5 to 10 years? Or do you think we still have more bumps?
I think we have more bumps realistically from here, because so when I was seeing that bifurcation, I was also seeing like, it's like you have to go through the full inventory of everything because you can't bring it, like when you're shifting into a new level of consciousness, and this is true in anybody's life, like for example, when you really decided to get clean, it probably involved a lot of reckoning of a lot of things you didn't want to look at previously, and you would have loved to have just left them behind without having to look at them. But in order to truly leave them behind, they had to be seen and integrated and released. And I think on a collective level, and then it plays out on an individual level, that's sort of what we're facing, and why everything is so intense, because all the ongoing manipulation notwithstanding to try and prevent the inevitable from happening. That's what it feels like to me. This is inevitable, and they're trying, and they're looking really sloppy about it in my opinion. But they're desperately trying. But all of that notwithstanding, in order to move into that like divine feminine, divine masculine, for example, we can't carry forward all of our resentments towards each other. They have to be reconciled. And in order to truly, truly reconcile them, we have to look at them. Because it would be so nice to just, like I said, letting bygones be bygones. And in a way, it is that simple. But at the same time, it's not. Like ultimately, you just are faced with the decision. Ultimately, do I want to carry this forward as a central part of my story and who I think I am forevermore? Or at this point, am I ready to let it go? Meaning, forgive myself, forgive any other people who are involved, forgive the whole situation, and choose to believe that I'm not diminished by it, that it might have been really hard, really, really hard, but I'm not less because of it. I'm actually more because of it. Like we have to sort of look at everything piece by piece. And the things that we don't want to look at, we don't want to look at because they're uncomfortable. And so I think that's where the real bumps come up. And that's why I feel like this time is also really imitating, or it's activating a lot of collective PTSD around so many things like genocides, communist takeovers, or like regime changes, or the Holocaust, concentration camps, being pitted against each other, medical experimentation against our will, like the depression, the plagues, the Spanish flu, like all the things that collectively we carry in this, the wars that we carry in our, I call it our Akasha, because it's like a cloud around us, around our consciousness, but it's kind of like it's slowing down the processing speed, and we have to go through and like delete. But it's so, that's a perfect example, not to relate us to technology too much because we're very much organic, but if I don't ever clear out my computer, it's going to run really slowly. Yep. And in order to clear it out properly and not get rid of something that I actually wanted to keep, I have to go through it manually and take the time to look at like all of those old printer, all that printer software from like 3 jobs ago. I'm never going to use that printer again. It probably has been replaced, and delete that and delete that and delete doubles and triples of photographs, delete old student documents, all that kind of stuff. But I can't properly do it unless I look at everything individually. And I think that's what's happening.
I use the computer analogy a lot too with a human or like that. But I think as much as we are organic, we are definitely some kind of supercomputer as well that we just don't know how to.
Totally.
It's an organic one. I don't cyborgs or anything, but man, it's like we're this perfect computer that we just don't know how to use.
Well, and I think, yeah, I agree with you. And I think our technology is like a stand-in for the skills that we have that we don't know how to use. So we've created like physical representations of that. But like, for example, my oldest son, I mean, he was a big psychic activation for me because he could communicate telepathically, and he was my first baby. And he's so amazing. He's 16 now. He's so amazing, so wise. And he would just, as a 4-month-old, just sit in his seat and look at me, and like with this very calm focus. And I was like, you want something, what is it? And I would sort of clear my mind and calm down and let him tell me, and I could always figure it out. And he almost never cried, and people commented on that, but I was like, because he's already telling me, and I'm listening. And he would just sort of project, it wasn't even a thought necessarily, but it was like hungry, hot, like a very basic concept. And so if he was hot, I would pick him up, move him out of his chair. We'd walk around, he'd get more of a breeze, and then he'd be happy, that kind of thing. And that was so interesting. And I was like, well, if a baby can do it, which then I found out all babies can because I became a midwife. If babies can do it, that means we can all do it. We just have forgotten how. And so instead, we've created these beautiful devices to connect us with each other no matter where we are. But really, it's like just a reflection of our telepathic abilities to connect with each other across vast distances. And it's just funny the way our technology mirrors us in a lot of ways. But I agree with you. I think we are the organic quantum supercomputers that render this whole entire simulation. And again, I think it's an organic simulation. I don't think that we're in somebody's shitty computer program. I think it's an organic simulation of how consciousness arranges itself, and we process the codes or the template and project it out onto sort of like the green screen and turn it into a real experienced environment.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, right. And that's what we call like the law of attraction. It's like other people just, they have that in them and they really know how to harness it and use it. Like I said, I definitely have it and used it. We all have it, but mine's a little wonky. I could also I don't know how to really, I wish I could just hone it in. Like, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, this comedian's going to play here. I can't some touring act and put it out there. And I do that kind of stuff. But like I said, I could also think about the inspector and she could show up. So it's not like I really know how to master it. But yeah, that's like, there's definitely some evidence out there that we are in some kind of, I like where you said it, organic simulation. I like that. That's really cool. And I couldn't agree more with you about that.
I like seeing that way. It's fun. It makes this whole adventure of life feel very fun and less scary, or like the stakes aren't as high as
Mm,
sometimes I think they are.
mm.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a download I used to get all the time, especially when if I would go through a really hard ceremony, like an ayahuasca ceremony, that was a very hard. I would all sometimes start laughing, or I would just have the vision that everyone was around me was laughing, and it was like I get that message all the time. Stop taking it so serious. It's just a joke. Just
Which is so funny because you're a comedian.
no, I'm not a comedian.
Oh, okay. You just host comedians?
Yes, I
I
just
don't
have.
know. You're pretty funny, Mike.
I'm too old to be a comedian. I had a comedian tell me last night that that's just an excuse. I said, you're probably right, but I'm never going to be that guy that plays in my own comedy club to get stage time. So, and then I started explaining to him, and he's like, okay, well, then I guess you can't. I go, so that means I wouldn't have to be here. I have to go do the open mics other places. He's like, all right, you got a point.
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Well, you're part of the comedy community anyway.
Yeah.
You clearly have a sense of humor.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
It gets me by is laughing. Yeah, I mean, Amy. So, and can you communicate with your son still telepathically?
My oldest son?
Yes.
Yeah, we do. Like, he's funny. He's a kid that just doesn't talk very much. Like, he talks. He's a normal kid, but like he's just one of those like strong silent types.
Yeah.
And we just have the kind of bond where like we can look at each other and I
Yeah.
know, it's kind of like you have with friends too, like where there's some common thing that you think is ridiculous and funny, but nobody else is in on it, and so you just give each other a little glance and
Yeah.
you know what's up. But it's a little bit different now because I think once our language comes on board,
Mm.
we just rely on that less heavily. But he and I always understand each other. I feel really lucky to be his mother, and he is just an exceptional soul.
That's awesome.
It's one of those things where I'm like, I could talk about him for ages, but I know nobody else cares as much as I do.
I'll listen. I don't know how many listeners I'll listen. But anyway, yeah, that's wild. And I think the same thing, like my wife totally is in tune with that. And like with our dogs, like she knows what's going on with our dogs too. Like she'll be like, we have one that's 15 now. And I'll be like, is she all right? She's like, she's totally fine. She's just tired. And I'm like, okay. And she really does know. Like she taps in. I was telling you before we started, my wife does theta healing. She's kind of moved and does more than just that, but that's how she started. And she communicates for sure with our baby. I gotta ask her. She never said it, but I'm almost positive, like you just said about with the babies, because our kids barely ever cried, and it's like she knew like all the time. And she probably, I need to ask her. It's gonna be an interesting conversation tonight, which I know she does with our dogs. And I think you're right about that language thing. It's like it's a simple. That's probably something with our connecting telepathically, is that it's probably like it's not as big as we think. It's not that giant text message. It's probably like the ways that we communicate that it's more. But it kind of makes sense you say that, because like that's when I'll get a feeling I should check in on this person, and that's all I'm getting, and that's probably how it's not as elaborate as we think. That's cool.
Totally. I just think we're all linked up, and I think like it's not even that. This is what I mean when I'm like it's as simple as breathing. I really believe that, because when I think about it, I'm like, well, duh, obviously we are, because when you have a baby, you are responsible now for the survival of a very vulnerable being that can't do anything for itself for the first, quite a long time. So how are you best going to be able to ensure that survival? You're going to have a link with them that could be called psychic. So you're going to have an empathic link, a telepathic link. You're just going to like be very aware of them. But it's also going to extend to other things. Like I notice every time that I get pregnant. So this is my 5th pregnancy, and every time I get less and less tolerant of being able to watch like horror movies, or even before I kind of caught on to the conspiracy stuff, or like knew about the child trafficking and things like that, right? Like I just couldn't watch those things anymore. And I could see the connection with pregnancy and childbirth. And I was like, right, because I'm becoming so empathically open to be able to communicate with my baby and sense the whole environment, that I'm also really sensitive to the concept of suffering of other people, or like really, really negative imagery. Like I need to be kind of in top form, if that makes sense. And I just don't think I don't even think it's that mystical. We just think it is because
Yes.
we've become really disconnected from it. And it's our natural trajectory to return to that. And one of the things we do is we imagine this a lot harder than it is, but it's just sort of like opening up to it, letting it unfold, and like cultivating some discipline and creating some space for it to happen, and not insisting that it perform for us.
Mm.
Because I also think our psychic selves are super traumatized by many, many, many campaigns to eradicate that aspect of ourselves and disempower us. And so it's like been traumatized into hiding, doesn't feel safe, doesn't want to come out. There's a lot, like that part of ourselves feels like there's a lot at stake. There's like being rejected from the community. There's accusations of like witchcraft, devil,
Yeah.
communication, that kind of stuff, heresy, being burned at the stake or hung or tortured or jailed or, taken away from your family or your community, or if you're indigenous, being taken away and put into like a re-education hellhole, right? There's like, and this has happened all over the world for centuries. So I think our psychic selves are very traumatized, and we can't further insist that it just show up and perform because we want it to. We have to like create a space for it to be coaxed out. Like
Yeah.
you wouldn't find a feral cat that's been abused and
Yeah.
come out right now. you'd
Yeah.
you'd
Yeah. Play
coax
with this
that.
little
You'd give
ball.
it to
Exactly.
Tina, like yeah.
Wow. That really makes sense too. It really does. I actually, just this conversation, I think my idea of what psychic ability is supposed to be has changed so much. More of like a simple, it's more of a simple type thing. Like, I don't know. I just, the way this conversation, it's pretty, my eyes are open to it a little bit different. I've also had that accusation so many times. Oh, you practice satanic stuff. You're satanic. And I'm like, what? Because if I don't take pictures at ceremonies, but if they've ever seen, there's once or twice, there's a photographer there. So I think people saw, I must have showed pictures or something, but I remember my friends saying, oh, you do that satanic stuff. I'm like, what do you say? Because they saw the altar and the skulls, and it's just different.
Yeah.
That's just what you're trained to think, that's all satanic stuff. I know what it was. I sent my friend on a ceremony I wasn't able to attend, so he went without me. And he's like, I first got there and I was like, he sent me to some satanic cult or something. Like, what? So that's what I was thinking the whole time. And then other people were like teasing me, saying like, yeah, that's, but people, when they just don't understand, they go to the satanic thing. And same thing like with the women, like you were saying, burning at the stake, like that's all collective conscious in our psyche. Like you said, I mean, like I've gone back in ceremonies and seen myself in concentration camp.
Yeah.
And it's like, you go back and like, that's only a few generations, not even what's my grandparents, era of like the trauma that we put in. And another thing, like you were saying about the horror films, I used to be a huge horror film fan, loved horror movies. I can't stomach to watch a person be murdered. That's an actually interesting thing we should have spoke about was, and I could talk about it a little bit right now, is I used to love violent movies and scary films and all that stuff that now I can't. Obviously some really good movies, there's always like a killing or something. If it's really good, sure. But if it's just like that, almost like porn, like of just like
Yeah.
Walking Dead, for example, it's just literally like it's just killing. Like I can't. I have no tolerance for it. I don't like any video games like that. Like I just can't. I don't want to see it. And it's like we've conditioned ourselves so much violence. It's like, why is that what's always shown to everyone? Even like children, it's just violence, killing. It's like it's just pumped into our everything we consume when it comes with media. And it's just like, it's not good. It's just not what, I don't want it around me. It's just not what I will watch anymore. It's just, and it's so that was something that's like, I step back and I'm like, wait, I'm the same guy that like favorite film is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And like, and all these, like, I loved all those films, every type of horror or slasher or anything. I was so into it. At an early age, I got into mixed martial arts. I mean, because I'm such a fan, I still watch, but I watch with such a different lens these days. Like, and when I say these days, I mean the last 10 years, maybe even more. Like when someone's getting hurt bad, like I look at it as just as the highest level of sport and athleticism. But when I'm watching a guy like get his head smashed in and they're not calling it, I'm like screaming, like, just get him off. Or like I'm all for when someone gets hit hard and they call it quick. good. Like that the fight would have been over. You know what I mean? Like I watch it now with a different lens, and it's just really the only sport that I still love. So I do watch it, but sometimes my stomach, there's been fights where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can watch this right now. But it's that, and also there was a time that I listened to a lot of like rap music, right? And it's funny because I have such a good taste in music and been around so many amazing artists. But there was a time in my life that I was, really listening to, and I think it's because of where I grew up, and I was in that great era of Biggie Smalls and Jay-Z. They all came up. So I guess Wu-Tang Clan, all that stuff was, when I grew up was happening in this area. So I kept it going, but then it started getting like ridiculous with the things that these rappers were talking about. And I was even involved in that business for a little bit, selling beats to rappers. And it got and I noticed that the more I would listen to it, the more like my thoughts, and this is when I started really learning about law of attraction. I'd be like, the things I'm thinking, or I play video games and somebody cut me off, and it's like, I wouldn't act on it, but I thought in my mind, like, oh, I'm playing Grand Theft Auto, you pull this person out of the car. And I was like, whoa, this is nuts.
Yeah.
Like, you step back, you're like, wait a minute, this is totally infecting my brain. And not that I acted on it, but there's younger children, like, and I'm not for censorism. I'm 100% against censoring anything. But it's like, why is that pushed onto us so much? And that trauma, just too much trauma. And it's opening up our past lives or whatever, or other times, like, bringing old wounds back too, Yeah, you're right. Like, there's a lot that has to happen before we can't put anything under the rug.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But I think at the same time, like, we're experiencing like beautiful things right now already, and we're pretty early into the process. Like, we're seeing people like band together and come up with different solutions, and for all of the highlighting of the riots and the this and the that in the conspiracy community, there's also been so much collaboration and so much sharing, and that's just why it's like, I think exactly what you said is why it's important to consider what we pay our attention to very carefully, because I really think that's how they get us to create reality for them. Because then they feed us the imagery and the thought suggestions and the sounds and all that they want to see produced. And it's low vibrational. It's like, it feels like a trap. It keeps us feeling, active in our PTSD and just really hopeless and in a lot of pain. And they feed us the imagery, and when we don't know how our own technology works, then we just render it on some level or another. We produce a reality that matches the information they're giving us. I think that's what predictive programming is, and that's how it works. And when we choose to shift our attention to things that make us feel freer, lighter, full of more self-love, more compassion for ourselves and others, anything in that direction, then we become open to different possibilities of creation. And even like, it's so funny because the idea of being practical, I think, is like one of the biggest, stupidest psyops that we perpetuate on each other, because I'm like, what does that even mean? Just because you think there's going to be obstacles and hurdles, you're telling me I should be practical? Like, so basically I should just give up and fit into a box and never live up to my potential. That's what practicality means. And we've like, for people of our generation, a lot of us have heard that from our parents, and I'm sure heard it from their parents. And like, that doesn't even make sense. We're always trying to create something new and something that really reflects the advancement in our consciousness. And I think that's why the kids that are coming in are so amazing, because they're kind of just like, not going to listen to you guys anyway, but thanks for trying, harder to, preserve this amazing quality that I have, and see me in my magic and my potential, rather than project all of your damage onto me. I really appreciate it, but I'm not available to receive your damage. So
Yeah, I mean, these kids are amazing, and it's everywhere. It's not just my kids at all. It's
yeah.
I don't think I'm special. I don't think my children are special. It's just this time period right now. When they come out the box, I mean, these kids are just they're different from when, I don't know. I just think they're different than the 80s, 90s kids when I was growing up. They're just something special. I really do believe in the whole indigo and that whole rainbow prophecy and all that stuff. I really truly see it, and I see it's coming. I just feel also sad that so many people that are asleep and they do, the junk food and the poisons and things that are put on these poor kids too, and the medications and things like that, but not my place. I just got to do the best I can for who's around me. It's sad that we see that.
That's what I keep coming back to too, because I'm such a maternal person. I love all the kids, and I can't handle the idea of child suffering, but I have to accept that it happens insofar as just not being choosing to be completely oblivious to it. But that I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have my children, because I feel like what a gift to love them as purely as I can and give them as much, I don't know, like space to unfold according to their own trajectory as I can. And to just know how powerful that is, like what a domino healing effect that is on like that. I can't, oh my God, if I could save all the children in the world from suffering, I would be standing first in line, putting my hand up, being like, pick me for this job, pick me. But I can't. And so I got to do what I can do, which is to love myself and love other people and love my children, and know that those effects are not negligible. They multiply exponentially.
That's literally it, man. That is it. Like that's with everything, right? I mean, it's amazing. We children, right? Because now you're affecting another generation but yeah, you just got to take care of yourself. And that's where all the growth, that's how you change the world. I know it's so corny, but it's so true. That's how you change it. You just take care of your space. And then if you have children, even more so. Yeah, it's a pretty cool time to be alive, man.
It is a cool time to be alive. I feel like this is like the best possible high note to close out this conversation too, because it's like just the most beautiful affirming message is like, yeah, just we just do our best, take care of ourselves, clean up, the things that we've inherited, that we've experienced to the best of our ability, and know that does not disappear. Like that affects everybody. It's in service to all of humanity. And then by extension, the whole earth and all of the creatures that are alive on it. The more we return to that space of wholeness and loving ourselves and loving each other, the better this whole situation gets. And I think to me, that's where I feel like we're heading based on the information I've received.
Well, that's great. That's awesome.
Mike, it's been so much fun to talk to you. I just feel like I don't even know if I did a good job at interviewing you. I think you kind of partially interviewed me sometimes, but no, it's fine. It was such a great conversation. I feel like people are going to love hearing this. And selfishly, I'm like, well, I don't really care anyway, because I really enjoyed it.
I'm a little rusty. I will say that I'm sorry. I'm taking a break on my podcast, so I'm a little rusty. Normally I'm doing these a lot, so I'm a little bit faster, but this was so much fun. I'm sorry if I had so many questions for you. So
yeah,
I could add a million more. Maybe someday I'll have you on. That could be a cool idea if you'd ever want to come on my podcast, and I can ask you a million questions because there's so many I had for you.
Yeah, of course. I would love to. I'd be so honored. But I just think it turned out perfectly. Like, I think it was such a good, fun give and take of the conversation. And it was a huge joy to get to know you and have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for listening. And if you caught this and you enjoyed it, send us a little bit of love. Screenshot yourself listening, post it to social media, tag us so that we know that you are enjoying it. But we both appreciate your attention in this world of so much competing attention grabbers. So I hope it enhanced you, and I hope you have a beautiful day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you on the next episode. Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode. I appreciate you more than my words could ever say. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you on the next episode.